The Black Rhino Expansion Project aims to boost numbers of the critically endangered black rhino by increasing the land available for the animal's conservation, reducing pressure on existing reserves and providing new territory in which they can breed up quickly. Black rhinos existed in large numbers in Africa until the late 1960s, when Asian and Middle Eastern demand for rhino horn fueled large-scale poaching, wiping out 96% of the population in just 20 years. By 1992, there were less than 3,000 black rhino left in the wild. Today, the Provincial Conservation Organisation is rapidly running out of space in which the species can breed up quickly. Ecologists estimate that for the population growth rate to remain high, the number of black rhino in any area should be kept below 75% of the area's ecological carrying capacity. Some protected areas are already nearing carrying capacity. Partnerships have been formalised and founder populations of about 20 black rhino are being released simultaneously onto the land. Experience has shown that releasing relatively large groups simultaneously is optimal for rapid population growth. And rapid population growth can mean the difference between survival and extinction for an endangered species. Security of existing and new black rhino populations will always be a top priority and a major component of the Black Rhino Range Expansion Project. But some say that focusing exclusively on keeping existing animals safe at the expense of growth is like keeping your money under the bed in case you get robbed on the way to the bank. This project is one of the many high-profile international projects funded by WWF Netherlands. It's a reflection of global concern, making a difference locally for South African conservation needs. These two orphan polar bear cubs were rescued from the Alaskan wilderness and made their debut at the San Diego Zoo's Polar Bear Plunge. The brother and sister duo, Kalak and Takij, made themselves at home in the zoo's exhibit. And as crowds looked on, the polar bears explored their new surroundings and ventured into the 130,000-gallon chilled pool. The orphan cubs were rescued from the wild in Barrow, Alaska, after their mother was harvested by an Alaskan native hunter. Employees of the San Diego Zoo were very excited to have these two orphan cubs in their famous polar bear exhibit. This was the first time these cubs, who were 6 months old, had complete access to the San Diego Zoo's whole polar bear exhibit. The trainers were a little bit anxious because these polar bears are very little, but boy were they having fun. Biologists determined these cubs would not have survived on their own in the wilderness. This crate holds precious treasure. 3 small white-lined cubs all the way from South Africa. The male cub and 2 female cubs arrived at their home after a 20-hour flight from Timbavati Game Reserve. These hand-reared cubs, 6 months old, will eventually take part in an advanced breeding program at this zoo in Australia. The white lion is extinct in the wild, and only 200 exist in zoos and animal sanctuaries across the world. The cubs were in quarantine for a month to ensure that they carried no diseases which could be transmitted to other animals in the zoo. The cubs were named in a tribal ceremony. The male cub, Magigwan, whose name means Great Lion Warrior, lords it over his sisters, Nugawi and Jabulani. While existing in African mythology, The first confirmed sighting of white lions was in South Africa in 1975. There are only 3 bloodlines of white lions, since many of the existing animals have been bred in captivity. Mogo Zoo has a reputation of successfully breeding big cats in captivity. And the zoo is hoping that once the cubs are older, they will be able to continue the line. If you don't spread the gene pool far enough, experts say you create the great risk of inbreeding, and from a veteran perspective, it's very dangerous. The spread of animals worldwide is terribly important for the breeding program and the lion's well-being. The long-term aim of this project? To send these lions home. Cologne Zoo introduced a 3-week-old southern poodoo baby, an animal which originates in South America. Poodoos are a deer species, and they are the smallest type of deer with a shoulder height of about 30 centimeters. They live in the woods in the southern tip of South America. The special thing about all the deer babies is that they have spots which act as camouflage to protect them against wild animals. According to Seattle, Washington's Woodland Park Zoo, a fawn usually remains hidden for a number of days after birth, only emerging to suckle when the mother visits. After a few weeks, the fawn joins its mother in her normal range. The young stay with their mother for 8 to 12 months, and male poodoo do not contribute to the rearing of young at all. Young southern poodoo lose their white spots about 3 to 5 months of age. At 8 months, male poodoos begin growing their first spike antlers, which eventually reach 2 to 4 inches in length when they are 7 years old. At the Japanese subsidiary of US software company Oracle in Tokyo, it's business as usual for the 1,600 employees. But for one special employee, it's her last day. Heidi is retiring after working tirelessly as the company dog for nearly 12 years. The Old English sheepdog has done the rounds of the company corridors endlessly and is known to all. For her direct boss, Takeshi Seto, she has always been part of the family. To that end, she greets everyone in typical canine fashion. A lick on the face maybe, a hug here and there for good measure. For the employees, it takes their mind off work momentarily and soothes what can be an impersonal work environment. One employee, Yoko Tamada, said they're surrounded by computers in this office, so it's nice to have a living thing around to soothe us and create a warmer atmosphere in the office. At nearly 70 years old in dog years, Heidi is unlikely to be hounded by the financial concerns of ordinary Japanese after she retires. While Japan's elderly fret over planned cuts in state pensions, Heidi was presented with a voucher for a year's supply of beef jerky at a ceremony in Tokyo, which marked nearly a dozen years of dogged devotion to Oracle Japan. And while Oracle Japan's profits have dived of late, there are no canine cutbacks for the moment.
私たちの感謝の気持ちを添えてビーフジャーキー1年分を送ります。2003年2月6日、日本オラクル株式会社代表取締役社長新宅正明、
Heidi's role in helping human employees to relax and make the most of their creative powers will be taken over by Wendy, a puppy of the same breed. Heidi has, in her own way, left her mark on the company. The long-haired pooch has been adopted by a member of staff at Oracle Japan, who said he hopes to keep her in the manner to which she has become accustomed. But for now, it's time for Heidi to hand in her company security card. Summer camps for baby elephants. Yes, that is exactly what authorities of this Indian zoo are doing. 4 orphan baby elephants are being trained by a special team of trainers brought in from the neighbouring Assam state. Elephant populations in the northeast account for more than 1/3 of the country's nearly 30,000 pachyderms. Mahavir, a trainer, says training elephants at a young age helps discipline them in later life. All 4 of these Asian elephant calves have traumatic pasts and were brought to the zoo after being rescued from different parts of the state. Hira, Mary, Janaki and Shankar are being taught to obey instructions of their human masters, besides learning to share a bathing pond. S.K. Sinha, director of the zoo, says training was part of a rehabilitation package to prevent the calves from turning into rogues. Asian elephants, numbering about 45,000, live in 13 countries in South and Southeast Asia. For curious onlookers, the training program holds a charm of its own. Some say it's fascinating to see these animals following orders dutifully. An estimated 1.5 million have already visited the zoological gardens in 1 year. Nandakan Zoo houses a botanical garden, and part of it has been declared a sanctuary. This zoo is also famous for its white tiger population. New Yorkers are fed up with pigeons and their poop. With millions of these pesky birds in Manhattan, it's no laughing matter for people wanting to enjoy sitting outside on their lunch breaks. So one city park has decided to do battle with the pigeons and is experimenting using hawks to scare away the birds. Bryant Park lies in the heart of Manhattan, next to bustling Times Square, which is home to thousands of pigeons. Evidence of the pests is everywhere, with hundreds of droppings spattered all over the park, on the patios, the pavements, and of course, on the park benches. But now, these pigeons have met their match. Mocha, the Harris hawk, has been drafted in by Bryant Park to scare away the flocks of pigeons. Master falconer Tom Cullen, a leather glove running up his left arm and saddlebag pouches filled with dead chicks hanging from his sides, whistles commands to Mocha as they patrol the park. When Bryant Park saw that the Tower of London used falcons to keep pigeons away, officials thought they'd give hawks a go. And so far so good, according to the Bryant Park Restoration Corporation. Besides the problem of droppings falling on New Yorkers eating lunch or strolling in the park, officials point out that pigeons are not a native species to the area and so really don't belong there. The hawks don't normally feed on pigeons, but these birds of prey would certainly put a scare into them. Storks are often known to keep to themselves, but not in this Lithuanian village of Bitynai. Here, they're practically taking over. Nearby Rumbinas National Park is home to several thousand storks in the summer. But over the last few years, growing numbers are moving outside the park and taking over trees in nearby Bitanai. It's not that the locals are complaining. These storks are being received as welcome guests. Bitanai was once infested by a huge population of garbage-eating crows, and residents decided to try and attract the cleaner and more attractive stork. They went to work constructing stock platforms on trees, encouraging storks to take over and begin nesting. Slowly but surely, the storks took up the offer. Today, Bitanai is home to more than 50 stork families. There's plenty of food supply in nearby rivers, so the population is expected to continue growing. Come August, however, it'll be time to head south. The love life of two swans from a city park in the centre of Moscow is causing a debate between animal activists and local officials. The swans are one of the chief attractions at Moscow's renovated Christi Prudi Pond. They were brought in at the expense of an upscale waterside restaurant and have become popular with children and ordinary Muscovites eager to see wildlife in their sprawling metropolis. But groups of animal activists criticise the decision to clip the swans' wings. They say the birds would never adapt to such conditions normally and are mutilated so that they cannot act on their natural instinct to fly away. The activists gather petitions by the swans' pond to condemn their treatment. And since the swans can't sign, they vote with their feet. The male swan attempted this summer to half run and half fly away on his clipped wings. He was caught by city workers on the road outside the pond, and then had his left wing fully cut off. These animal rights groups also criticise officials for in effect forcing the birds into a shotgun, loveless partnership. This particular breed of swans, the royal mute swan, usually mates for life in partnerships of their choosing. These two birds, activists say, were caught separately and have been forced to live together. This, activists say, is emotional trauma for the swans. They help one another to live, say the activists, but are bereft of true swanly love. The swans' keepers say that the birds are given ideal conditions and that their upkeep is monitored by the local zoo. There are reports that royal mute swans do infrequently change pairs, particularly when one mate dies. In these instances, the new pair will live on the territory of the female if she's older, as is the case with these two swans. The manager of the restaurant who finances the swans says that it is impossible to tell if the swans are happy, but he's certain that they're well cared for. And for now, Moscow officials seem to be on the restaurant side, clipped wings and all. When you think of camels, Australia would probably be the last place that comes to mind. But Australia is home to the largest wild dromedary camel population in the world. Experts say there are around 750,000 camels that roam the outback. And a remote indigenous community near Uluru, or Ayers Rock, is trying to turn this growing resource into a lasting means of income. The Docker River community are building a series of stockades to trap wild camels in a bid to tap into the lucrative Asian market and Middle Eastern market. Australia started live exporting of camels in 1996 and is launching a meat export market. A tank of clean fresh water inside the stockade will attract the camels, and then after a few weeks, the crew will install one-way gates to trap the animals. Half a stockade was built a few years ago, but the project ran out of money, and work has now started again after a $50,000 Australian donation from the Winemakers Federation of Australia. Docker River has a population of 300 Aborigines. Like many indigenous communities, it is plagued by alcohol abuse, petrol sniffing, and poverty. "70% of people in this area are unemployed and struggle to combine a traditional way of life with the demands of modern living."
Oh, good boy.
Anthony Wayne, who manages this project, has seen how the camel muster has returned people's self-esteem. Chris Hill, who runs the team of workers, has been working with camels for years. And tourists to Central Australia count a camel ride as top of their list of things to do. Some wildlife experts, however, are warning that feral camels are harming delicate ecosystems by overgrazing and fouling waterholes. Wild camels cover huge areas of the desert and may outnumber red kangaroos by about 100 to 1. If this camel muster proves successful, it could be one way of reducing the local camel population.